Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word Live and to the 2018, I have no idea why I'm doing this live, season review. This could get a little bit messy, but hopefully it'll all go okay. We're going to run from Australia all the way to Abu Dhabi, try and mention every single race, which is why tonight there are four of us. There's me, obviously, Jonty. We're going to be joined by Dan as well, and Chainbear returns after his hour-long video making session stuff. Brilliant video, by the way. You have to go and check that out. Just absolutely fantastic. So I'm hoping possibly against hope that these guys are going to know something about the season, because I'm not convinced. I was making last-minute notes right up until the last few seconds there in the stream. So I'll try not to make the stream too long, but I can't guarantee it won't be a little bit longer than perhaps desired. But let's start by saying a very good evening to Jonty. Hello, Jonty, sir.
Good evening, Sean. Good evening, everyone. Are we looking forward to this?
I am, but I'm a little bit like Stuart in chat. I'm not entirely sure I can remember everything, so I'm kind of relying on you guys possibly a little bit. But I'm sure between us we'll be able to work our way through it. I'm just going to sort chat out on screen, actually, because for some reason it's not doing what it should be doing. Technical difficulties, but yeah, hopefully we'll be able to muddle our way through together, mate. I'm sure we'll be fine. We're going to say a very good evening as well to Dan. I've been working with him a little bit this week on some videos, so it's going to be really lovely to hear his fantastic voice again. Hello, Dan.
Hiya, mate. Thanks for that. I really appreciate that. It was a difficult session in the week, so I'm hoping today goes a little bit smooth, and I'm hoping that my memory serves me well, but this is going to be a good and a fun one, I think.
Absolutely. I'm also hoping he remembers a little bit more than me, but unfortunately there's no face tonight, people. But hello to Stuart.
Hello, Sean. Hello, Dan. Hello, Jonty. Nice to be here at the end of a very long season.
Was a long one, wasn't it? I love F1, but 21 races does seem quite a lot, especially when you start making notes on them all, which could get interesting. I think the best place to start, if anybody has any qualms with it, as a very loud car goes past for some reason, great start. I think we'll start in Australia. I think it seems like the obvious place to start. First race of the season, 3 months without racing, Jonty. It's one of those Australia where, for me, it always gets forgotten. People talk about it as a better race than it actually is. There were really only two big moments of that one, the virtual safety car and the Haas issues. But as I just said there, 3 months without Formula One. It's just good to have F1 back, isn't it?
Oh, it's always good to have F1 back. And like you say, sometimes Australia gets picked up a bit more than it actually is because we've been waiting so long. But there was a bit of on-track action. We had a couple of incidents and some bizarre stuff right at the start of the weekend with the timing line causing Ricardo problems.
Oh, yeah. See, I told you I won't remember everything. Bottas as well crashing in qualifying, Stuart, which was not really typical of his start to the season, because he had a very good start to the season, did Bottas. But yeah, I forgot about all that timing line stuff. But I think virtual safety car dominated the conversation. I think, Stuart, you did a video on it as well. I got some stick for my video on it at the time because I dared to make a joke. How dare I? But yeah, Vettel, very good move from Ferrari to benefit from that virtual safety car. Good strategy call. It just all a little bit wrong for Mercedes.
Yeah, I mean, how dare you make a joke? It's very serious business, F1. Yeah, kind of a sort of a strange twist on the race, because it did look like Mercedes were going to be dominant all weekend, but that virtual safety car came out where Vettel looked like he was in a bit of a precarious position. He'd been out-qualified by Raikkonen, was sort of lagging a bit in the race, and then suddenly was in the right place at the right time, which sort of set him up nicely for the opening of the season, where he did sort of look the strongest. And we did, I believe, come away from that race starting to debate virtual safety cars and how much of an advantage you get, and is it messing up the racing? You know, classic F1 stuff.
Yeah, storm in a teacup, I think is the way to look at that one. But was it I can't remember, was it a technical glitch in the end from the Mercedes side, or was it human error? I seem to recall there was something about a software issue which caused them to lose time on their data.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but there's something slightly wrong in their modelling that misjudged exactly how much the pit lane delta would be affected by the virtual safety cars. They didn't pit when they should have, and yeah, it all kind of went a bit wrong.
It was looking good for your man Romain Grosjean, wasn't it, Dan? It was all looking very good for Haas, and then I believe it was a wheel gun failure rather than human error in the end. I know the mechanics got a lot of stick for that until Haas came out and confirmed it, but I mean, I'm trying not to look at the season as a whole. I'm trying to look at them race by race, but it's very hard not to look back and say, what could have been this year for Haas? They could have been fourth had we not had those issues in Australia. Such a shame, though.
Yeah, 100%. And at this point as well, we'd never really seen Haas anywhere near the top 5, yet alone running, I think it was 4th and 5th. I mean, it was really something special that was starting to boil up there. But yeah, that really did break, I think, many hearts, to be perfectly honest with you, because at that point of the season, we had no idea if Haas were going to be able to continue that form for the rest of the year. Like you say, we still got plenty of stuff to talk about tonight, but it's still, at that time, that was a big, big mistake in Haas's championship. And you know what? At that time, I was really questioning if they were going to continue any sort of form for the rest of the year. And it's such a shame that it did end up biting them on the ass, really.
See, the funny thing with Haas is, if somebody said to me in mid-season that they would finish 5th in the not mid-season, sorry, in pre-season, if they finished 5th in the championship, I'd have laughed right in their face. I think I said that to you midweek, Dan. I never expected this from Haas, so it can't be seen as a failure of a season, but such a disappointing day. But going on from Australia, never thought they'd build on that. I thought it was going to be one of those where everybody else would develop over the next few races, and that was a big bunch of points that they were going to regret massively if they ended up 7th or 8th in the championship.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the only, I suppose, positive that came from that, obviously, apart from getting some new wheel guns, was the fact that we had the classic line, now we can fight. Fernando Alonso getting that P5. And you know what? At the time then, I thought, you know what? That's a brilliant switch. McLaren have nailed it with that Renault deal, and they could maybe squeeze a podium this year. I think Australia taught us a lot, but didn't teach us that much.
No, I mean, McLaren... let's pretend we don't know what happened the rest of the season. They look very strong after Australia. They could challenge for 4th, couldn't they, Jonty?
Oh, I was super excited after that race. I must be honest, because you got McLaren finishing 5th. Haas had started the race P6 and 7 on the grid, although we didn't get to, and they were running 4th and 5th, but we didn't get to see the result of that. Yeah, everything was shaping up for a Titanic fight. You know, it was great. This is what everyone wanted to see.
Where Australia for me failed to deliver in a lot of ways. We saw some good stuff, great stuff from Alonso, good stuff to see Haas up there, a bit of controversy I suppose with the virtual safety car, but where Australia didn't deliver, Bahrain, absolutely incredible race. I'm not going to give away too much because we've got a video coming next week on this one, but it's got to be up there as one of the races of the year. We had overtaking, drama, controversy, quite literally from lights out right up to the flag. Valtteri Bottas could have made that move on the last lap, and he was right on the back of Vettel into that final corner. So action all the way through that Grand Prix, Stuart. And again, I don't want to say too much, but it's one of, if not my favourite race this season.
Yeah, in fact, so much happened. When I was sort of having a quick flick through the races before we started, I was reading the synopsis and like, oh yeah, and that happened, and that happened. Oh my God, yeah, great race. And again, off the back of, talking about whether Haas would live to regret what happened in Australia, did Bottas live to regret not making more of an effort to get past Sebastian Vettel, where, well, I think Sebastian Vettel would have made more of an effort to get past Bottas if it was the other way around. Yeah, very interesting race from start to finish.
Do you agree, Dan? Did you enjoy Bahrain? I know it's a long time ago, and I feel like it gets forgotten sometimes, a bit like Australia, but just a great race. Some great stories as well. Pierre Gasly, of course.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. That was a stunning race from Gasly. And once again, like John said earlier, we went into a race where we're thinking, oh, maybe McLaren, maybe Haas are going to be in that midfield. But it all just flipped on its head straight away. And whereas in Australia, Mercedes looked like the team to beat, now Ferrari, they're the team to beat. It was such a brilliant time of the year. And whereas over the winter, we really did think, oh, Mercedes are going to walk away from this one. This year, it's going to be a complete whitewash. Vettel with those 2 wins. Like you say, Bottas as well, starting to get in the mix. I'm one of those people, if I'm being honest, I sort of think Bottas did the right thing. I mean, looking back on it now, it doesn't look so great. But at the time, I thought, you know what? This is sensible. Get the points now. Don't do anything silly and just do a slow championship sort of build. But like we said, that didn't really amount to anything in the end. But what a crazy race Bahrain was. And it only got better from that.
I've got to disagree on the Bottas thing. I have to.
No.
He should have gone for it. And I know that's all right with hindsight, but He's a racing driver. There's easily a gap there. He's better on his tyres. Vettel's still nursing his. Throw it up the inside. And I think it comes up in a video this coming week. At the end of the day, it's Bahrain. The worst thing that's going to happen is he locks up, goes straight on into the runoff area, and ends up second anyway.
That's very true. I mean, my memory does hurt me a little bit. It's still a little bit foggy, so I'll blame it on that. I'll blame it on that. But no, I think we all know with Bottas, he's not the most, I don't want to say instinctive racer, because I still think he's a very good racer. But when it comes to dive bombs like a Daniel Ricciardo or a Max Verstappen, he's not that sort of driver. He's a very conservative driver in that sort of sense. So it didn't surprise me too much. I would have loved to have seen it happen. I'm not going to lie. That would have been brilliant. And that really would have tipped off that race, which was a fantastic race anyway. But no, I still stand by it. At that time of the season, I remember thinking he'd done the right thing. But like I say, I think now, probably maybe not so much looking at the rest of the championship.
I'm going to pretend like we didn't discuss it earlier in the week, Jonty. Do you think Bottas should have made that move?
100%. Like we said, he got 7 seconds back to Hamilton. So at the very worst, it would have just been into the runoff area and still being second. There was absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain. That's the way a lot of these drivers need to, well, all drivers need to look at it. They need to see these situations of, right, am I going to lose out if I screw it up? No, go for it. And we've seen a little bit of that lacking this year from several drivers, but there's been a few who have been seizing it with both hands and possibly making those moves in the wrong places. I'm sure we'll come to that.
Yeah, plenty of that through the season, absolutely. Anything else to cover? Can you think of, Jonty, from Bahrain? I mean, I said it was a good race, but it's, aside from maybe one specific overtake, the triple overtake from Hamilton, it was just one of those where there was just that much action. It's hard to pick out main talking points. It was a great race.
Yeah, exactly. It was great overall. And it's also nice to say that even though it was a horrible incident, Kimi Raikkonen's pit crew man did recover and was all fine.
Yeah, absolutely. The main point in that one, wasn't it? And end of Kimi's race as well. I'm trying to think back to where he was. I think he was running second or third, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was definitely quite high up there.
And that did start a conversation about, are pit stops too dangerous? Because we'd already had the Haas situation in Australia, and then we had this. And I think we continued to have a few incidents over the first few Grand Prix.
Yeah. It's
a long time ago, but that conversation did happen.
It did, yeah. I remember. I think I did something on it in a review where I talked about, is it dangerous? Are we anywhere near the levels of refueling in terms of danger? But I mean, it's great with hindsight looking back. There were a few other pit stop errors through the season, but that was the biggest. And the same with the virtual safety car. We talk about Vettel benefiting from it. I can think of a race very recently where Lewis Hamilton benefited from it. So as I said at the time, it's swings and roundabouts when it comes to that kind of thing. But we'll move on to China. And I describe this every single time, Dan, as a race of two halves. I always do. For me, not much happened until around lap 22-ish, I think, when Bottas got the jump on Vettel in the pit stops. And then it all kind of went steady. A little bit of jousting? I can't think of the term after there at all, but I'll go with jousting between Vettel and Bottas for that win. Who was going to go for it? We got some good stuff as well with Raikkonen and Bottas scrapping and holding each other up, which allowed Vettel to close in. But it wasn't until Pierre Gasly was a little bit ambitious on his teammate, although I think that was a miscommunication. It was explained as in the end that we ended up with chaos. They took each other into a spin, or Hartley ended up in a spin, debris everywhere, safety car out, race on when the Red Bull stops. That's when the race came alive for me. So race of two halves.
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly fair statement. I really do. And I think a lot of people will look back at this race with rose-tinted spectacles, to be honest, because we remember that second half where those Red Bulls, I mean, we hadn't seen overtaking a lot last year. And this season in China with those Red Bulls on fresh rubber, we were seeing the top six really scrap it out. And it was looking like any one of those top six could go on and win. And it was something really exciting that we hadn't seen for quite some time. In Bahrain, we'd sort of been robbed from it because Bottas didn't make that move, as we were just saying. So it was really nice to see in China that going into the last sort of 20 laps, any one of those drivers could have won that race. But like you say, the early phase of the race really was just one of these races where it's more about strategy. Bottas made a brilliant undercut work. And again, that was really starting to show that his mistake in qualifying in Australia wasn't really going to be reflective of his early season. He was really on a good run of form at that point. And it was a weekend where Hamilton, once again, wasn't really anywhere, which was such a surprise considering how good he's been in the past few years and how good we thought he was going to be this year.
Yeah. It's so hard with Bottas, isn't it, to look at his first half of the season. He was so unlucky, and that safety car just cost him dearly. But do you agree with that, Jonty? Do you think it's maybe looked at or remembered in a different way because of all that action towards the end? It wasn't before that. It was a little bit lackluster. It had hit the mid-race lull, but right from the start.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. I mean, we get a lot of races like that, and we have done for many years when people have just got similar pace and can't really fight too much, and then the first round of pit stops mix things up a bit, which it had done here. But then you need that one little spark in the virtual safety car to really change things up, with some going for the tyre stop, others staying out. It really, really mixed up what was going on track. And from that point on, it was absolute edge of seat because, as Dan said, no one had a clue who was going to win. Anyone could have at that point.
Sorry, Stuart. I'm coming to you first on this one, mate. There is an incident we need to cover. Verstappen on Sebastian Vettel. I said at the time, I think Verstappen has to take the blame for that. It was a sloppy move. He didn't have to make the move at that point either. Much fresher tyres. Could have waited a couple of corners. Maybe waited till down at turn 5 and gone for a move where we saw Ricciardo versus Bottas. I mean, it was a bit hot-headed and very unnecessary, and ultimately it was massively costly for Vettel. And I'm sorry, Verstappen fans, it cost Verstappen the win.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And I wonder how much disagreement there'll be across the panel here. But yeah, that was a sloppy move from Verstappen. Sort of something we sort of saw a lot of him in the first half of the season, where he was a little bit desperate, a little bit too hungry, and not patient enough with making moves. And it was the kind of thing we started to see at the end of the last season. So much so that they sort of brought in that rule clarification about, how much you're allowed to move in the braking zones, because Verstappen was tending to get involved in incidents right down in the braking zones of corners when people were making moves. And it was the kind of thing that did worry me, because they've got this amazing talent in Verstappen, and we're all very excited for him. He won his first race when he moved up to Red Bull, and we wondered where he was going to go. And he was getting to this point where he hadn't quite matured enough mentally to control his raw skill. And it, looking forward a little bit, we did definitely cost him over the first half of the season.
Yeah, 100%. I'll come to you first, Dan, then Jonty can follow on straight after that one. Your take on that accident, that incident between Vettel and Verstappen?
Yeah, I think Stuart put it perfectly there. It was so rash at a time he didn't really need to be. I mean, I know we were only 3 races in, but it looked like Red Bull were the 3rd fastest team. Whereas once again in testing, it looked like they could be the 2nd fastest team. So they hadn't had the best start to the year. And this was their first real chance to get a win. And Verstappen, like you say, Stuart, too hungry, too rash. And in a way, it's a little bit disappointing, to be honest, because we know how much talent Verstappen has. But I would agree with you both. I would put the blame at Verstappen's door.
I've got to say that looking back, yes, it was very sloppy from Verstappen. But we did hear from Vettel himself say that he had left the door open. And if you go and watch it back, you can see that Vettel had more than half of the track's width available on the outside. He really could have just left it open a little bit so that there wasn't a contact. The more I've looked at it in this last week, sort of building up to the review and looking at the old races, Vettel could have done more to avoid it. I really do think that. But then I also think, how much did the previous incident, where Max had again been a bit too hungry on Hamilton, have been affected, because Hamilton did give him a very, aggressive chop, forcing him off the track, if you remember.
Yeah. It's nice to have somebody disagree. No, I to be honest, I'd still put the blame at Verstappen's door for that one, but the one with Vettel. But I do tend to agree there was plenty of space on the outside for Vettel to run into. But, you know, in that situation, locking up, not expecting Max to go for it, split-second decisions. We've said that so many times this year. But very quickly, I'll come to one of you on this one, and I'll go for... Let's go to Dan. How good was that move from Danny Rick on Valtteri Bottas? One of the moves of the year. Stunning. Super late. Typical Danny Rick.
It was pretty good, wasn't it? It was pretty good. And like we say, we really didn't even get to see these almost daring moves in 2017. So the fact that we were seeing them so early on in the year was brilliant. And yeah, one of the moves of the season for sure. Good stuff
from Danny Rick. He always gives us some good overtaking. But on to Baku. A lot of people would call this their race of the year. A lot of people go on about this as the best of the year. I completely disagree. It was one of those that I think we said in midweek, actually, Jonty. It was exciting rather than great, but it was a race that relied on two daft Red Bulls, a couple of safety cars, some sloppy driving here and there in the midfield to really give us a lot of action and drama. And I always feel like without that, we could end up with Baku 2016 all over again. So I don't think it was an amazing race. Like I say, exciting, absolutely. But the incident we really need to come straight onto, because it was one of the defining moments, really, Jonty, is that moment between Verstappen and Ricciardo. I'm standing by what I said at the time. Absolutely 50-50, both to blame for that one. But ultimately, the team needed to step in before it got to that point.
Yeah. I was just going to say that, wondering whether you would mention it or not. It's down to the team, that one. They know how bad these guys can get, especially with Verstappen, when they're scrapping. And they really should have been sort of pulling rank on them, saying, look, behave. We need this.
What was your take on that moment of stupidity between the two of them? I'm going to go with Stuart.
Yeah, I would definitely waver around the 50-50 line. And it was sloppy from both of them. And they were both hugging the same area of the track, braking very late, not giving the kind of respect and space to each other that you tend to expect from teammates. Sort of a bit different from when you're having an inter-team battle. When it's teammates, you sort of tend to just relax a little bit, especially when you've got a lot of points on the table suddenly. But yeah, to me, it spoke to both the drivers quite acutely, really. Ricciardo with his very late braking, surprise jumping out at you at the last minute in the braking zone, and Verstappen just not giving an inch at all and absolutely reducing any available space, even if you're in the middle of the braking zone, even if it looks like a sure thing. And those two character traits coming together, yeah, it was bad for both of them.
Dan, Bottas, we were talking about just a moment ago, so much bad luck in that early phase of the season. Race was maybe not his because Vettel was strong. I mean, Vettel threw it up the inside, locked a wheel. Had not done that, we could have had a great scrap. But after that moment, it looked like he pretty much had it in the bag. Hamilton didn't seem to have the pace. Bottas for the win, and then puncture. I think there's an image somewhere, it might even crop up on screen at some point, where he's just sat against some tyres, helmet on, looks devastated, sums up his first 4-5 race of the season.
Yeah, it so does. I mean, after that safety car where Ericsson hit Grosjean, I'm sure we all remember that one. After that, it really looked like Bottas had it. And I think most of us were thinking, yeah, Bottas almost deserves this a little bit. He's not been the best in this race, but he's had such a strong start to the year. Give him the win. That's going to be brilliant. Hamilton, once again, in Azerbaijan, didn't look at his best. But then somehow, the gods just did not fancy it. They did not fancy Bottas at this time. They did not. At the beginning half of the season, they just did not want Bottas anywhere near that podium or that race win. And it was such a shame. It really was. And I think Hamilton, after the race, I mean, obviously, we knew he went on to win the race, but even he couldn't celebrate. And the body language was so strange to watch. Even for Lewis Hamilton, who's won so many races, his body language was almost as if he knew he didn't deserve the win, which was such a strange thing to see. But for Bottas, that emotion, it really was a tough start to the year for him, despite his form being so good.
I love the way you word stuff. I really do. The gods didn't fancy it. I mean, what was... Go on,
I was
Jonty.
just going to ask if Dan was ever going to mention Grosjean seeing ghosts during that race.
Yeah, Ericsson hit him, man. I mean, Eric, it was a joke, absolute joke.
The word you're looking for in chat is deluded. I mean, I'm going to be fair to Grosjean. It wasn't the most idiotic thing he did in the first 5 races, but probably the second most, and that'll roll us on quite nicely to Spain, I guess. In fact, we'll start there. Why not? I'll come straight to you, Dan, because I'm sure you've got so much to say to defend him. What the hell was Grosjean doing in turn 3? I mean, that's just ultimate stupidity for a driver of that experience.
Can we skip Spain? Can we skip Spain? Are we allowed to do that? No? Okay. What a painful time that was to be a Grosjean fan. There's no defending that. There really isn't. And as much as I'd love to try, there's really not. Arguably worse than this Spa 2012. I think that is worse than Spa 2012. I really do. That could have been a major incident. There are a few drivers that obviously ended up DNFing, but there was no, I suppose, airborne cars or anything like that. It was they couldn't see. It was such a smokescreen across the circuit at a corner which most of those cars will be trying to go flat out. It was disgusting to see. It really was. And I still say this to this day. At this point in the season, I would have been surprised if he stayed for 2019. I really would. I'm still surprised, to be totally honest with you, because like you say, with all those years of experience, with a team that he's now been with 3 years, outperformed Magnussen in 2017, Gutierrez in 2016. He was the lead man at that team. And then the beginning half of this year was dominated by Magnussen, made all these mistakes. And Spain really, for me, was the one where I was thinking, oh my God, he is throwing this away.
I'm going to come to you, Stuart, on this one, because I don't think I've had your view on this. We've kind of given ours, but what's your take on that moment of what I call stupidity from Grosjean? He admits himself that he made the decision to floor it and go back across the track, which is just weird. I know it's split-second decisions, but that just doesn't add up to me.
I was literally going to use that phrase. I was going to say, I know we talk about split-second decisions a lot, but that just goes against every instinct a racing driver should have, doesn't it? And I did wonder if, 1 second into that move, when Grosjean was spinning sideways across the track of his own volition in a cloud of smoke, blinded on all sides, and when he thought, I'm quite glad we got the halo on the cars right now, because he's probably expecting 14 cars going full pelt into him. It was a miracle nothing worse happened. And I mean, I can't speak to how penalties are given out, but if something had happened, I can't see how he wouldn't have got away with anything less than a race ban. And the fact that he actually got away with it means he was still able to race. I think it's funny thinking to give out penalties when nothing actually happened, but your actions were just awful. It was so strange. I cannot explain what was going through his mind at that point.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's very lucky that there wasn't more made of that. Disappointing, obviously, for Gasly and Hülkenberg. Not to say too much more on Spain, because there wasn't an awful lot. In fact, I think we're going to be doing that for a while now. But yeah, pretty dominant from Hamilton. It's very much a Mercedes track, so kind of expected him to dominate, but he needed that after I keep saying a difficult start to the year, but it did contain 2 podiums and a win before Spain, so it wasn't all awful, but I think people know what I mean. But Monaco, I think Monaco was all about Ricciardo's redemption, really, Jonty. It was quite a story, obviously car issues as well, but some really good driving, obviously due to the nature of Monaco. He was able to hang on for the win, but all in all, typical Monaco, really. Big shout out, though, for Ocon in 6th.
Yeah, Monaco, still seem to me to just highlight some of the massive problems that everyone's got with the overtaking. Yes, you've got the massive sort of justice for Ricciardo, but he went round for 3/4 of the race or more with 180 horsepower less than everyone else, and they still just trailed along behind him. It was horrific to watch, I've got to be honest.
Still deserves a lot of credit for his drive, though, doesn't he, Ricciardo, to keep that thing going?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, well, we will never know what the difference is like driving them, but you just have to say 180 horsepower less. to get the car placed perfectly coming out of the tunnel or, coming up to turn one, it's got to be very, very hard for him. And he did a masterful job. And even better this time is that Red Bull knew where his tyres were during the stop.
Yeah.
You do have to. This race was a massive red flag for just generally the F1 as a whole. When we talk about how Monaco could be boring for an audience, but the drivers love it. The drivers love going to Monaco and racing Monaco. It's so exciting and right up against the barriers. And when you came out of the race with all the drivers saying, this was the most boring race I'd ever raced in, I wasn't even half pushing, that's when you started to think, oh no, there's something broken in here.
Yeah, it is great seeing a race around Monaco. It's a hell of a spectacle. But aside from Ricciardo, Ocon 6th, really good drive from him. Probably one of his drives of the season, actually. Maybe if you push aside Belgium, I think it's right up there for him. Verstappen crashed out FP3, had to start from the back, still managed to come through to 9th, I think, in the end. So in Monaco, not bad at all, did get some overtaking done. But the next race on, I'm going to come to you alphabetically. Dan, Jonty, then Stuart. So one after the other. Dan, Canada?
Crap.
So France then, that was a better race definitely for I say the spectacle, unless you like being in a situation where you have a migraine constantly because of all the lines on the track. It was a little bit psychedelic, I think you've described it as before, Dan, but not a bad race. Bit of controversy at the start with Vettel and Bottas into turn one. Puncture for Bottas, wing damage for Vettel. Managed to fight back to 5th, the German, with Bottas only 7th, which is a bit frustrating, I'd imagine, for him. But I quite enjoyed France, better than I expected it to be anyway.
Yeah, I didn't dislike it. Although psychedelic. I would still stand by that one. No, it was nice to see a new circuit on the calendar. I always enjoy that, and I always enjoy that buzz of a new track that a lot of fans haven't seen before and a revamped circuit. So that was really nice, and I really enjoyed the build up to that race. Lap 1, nice and feisty. We had cars going all over the place. They didn't care where the road was. Run off, that was fine. Just as long as they could get in front of another car. That was beautiful to see, although it was a bit carnage. And then, like you say, we were more watching Bottas and Vettel work their way back through the field. So it was a good race. I don't want to have a go at it, but it wasn't one of the best of the season. It wasn't one of the worst. I'd say it was more one of those sort of mid-pack sort of races.
I think following after Canada, it was probably an epic race. But in the whole season, it was okay, I think is the best way to put it. I'm going to read my notes to you here, Stuart, because this is what I've got for France, and I think it kind of sums it up. Not great for the home drivers. Gasly, Ocon out, Grosjean only 11th. Hamilton fairly comfortable, but Verstappen pushed hard, and them trophies.
The trophies. I forgot about the trophies. Wow. I mean, on the one hand, the trophies were hideous. But on the other hand, they were unique and interesting, and they weren't, a brand logo. So, I'm sure there were some people out who came out there and thought these are amazing. They're big gorillas. Why not? And yeah, a fairly middle of the road race. Definitely better racing than we thought coming out of free practice. As I recall, a little bit OP with the DRS coming down the main straight. But, I think plenty to work with for next year.
Yes, I forgot about all that after practice. There was a lot of talk, wasn't there, about it being a bit of a dull race, but you were expecting quite a decent race, Jonty, and I think were you pleasantly surprised? Yeah, well, not pleasantly surprised. Were you disappointed it wasn't as good as you expected, or is it kind of what you expected from Paul Ricard?
It wasn't what I'd expected, to be honest. I'd been looking at the track and the way that we've got DRS and how the cars are at the moment. I was convinced we were going to get closer action because there was so many variable geometry corners that lead into the straights, giving people the chance to stick behind, ready for having a move into the following corner, and it just never materialised. And it was a shame. I'm convinced, again, that they will be much better next year with the way the wings are changing. They will be able to follow closer. I'm certain of that. And it should suit tracks like that. But the race as a whole wasn't terrible. Far from being the worst. Far from being in the bottom 5, in my opinion. So, it was all right for its first time back. The biggest overriding memory I've got is the outpouring of anger across all social media from all the people who'd gone there, because getting to the track and getting out of the track was an absolute disaster, which threw up a lot of questions on whether it would stick around.
Yeah, I'd forget. See, this is the thing you talk about. We sort of look at the bigger moments of races, but you forget about some of these stories. Like Stuart was saying about practice, and like you've just said there about the roads, there was such an outpour, wasn't there? It was not good. I hope they can get that sorted because it just was not good enough. But we'll move on to Austria. I'm going to try and whiz through these a bit quicker because I didn't realise it's taken us 35 minutes to do 8 races, and one of those we flew through. But I think we can get through these a bit quicker now. But double DNF for Mercedes, I think the biggest shock to see that, given the hybrid reliability, Stuart, if I'm being totally honest. Was that their first double DNF since somewhere in the 50s? I know they had a massive gap between when they left and when they came back, but it's still hell of a stat.
In terms of technical DNFs, yes. Let's not forget that Bottas and Hamilton ran into each other in Spain 2016.
Rosberg and Hamilton.
What did I say?
Steady. You said Bottas.
Oh yeah, Rosberg and Hamilton. No, actually, I've got notes here. Mercedes is their third double retirement since returning to F1 in 2010. So, but I think the first time they just fell apart technically. Big surprise. Very glad they did though, or this season could have been a lot shorter.
Yeah, I did mean technical DNFs, by the way, for those pointing out in chat.
Oh yeah, you got to watch out. They'll be all over you.
Oh, they will. They're terrible. They never let me. Oh, they just don't let anything go. I love them, but they don't let anything go. Verstappen kept cool to take the win. Dan, pretty decent for him. More misery for Daniel Ricciardo, but it was a weekend pretty much all about tyres and blisters. A bit hotter than people expected. The track really eating them up, and it gave us some really good stuff in terms of strategy and some good racing as well.
I really enjoyed Austria, actually. I'm not going to lie. I really did. Again, I wouldn't put it at my very top, but I did really enjoy it. Whether that's because Grosjean finally got some points might be a different story, and he had a great race getting 4th place. But I think that Mercedes double DNF really did spice up a lot of the stories up and down the grid. So I think it's one that's forgotten a little bit, but I really enjoyed it. And with that Bottas pole position again and his DNF, it really was not a great start. And I hate to keep bringing it up, but he did just get so unlucky at this beginning part, and I think we shouldn't forget that.
I'll tell you what was not good to see, Jonty, but unusual to see, and in some respects a little bit of a flashback to the old days, was Hulkenberg's proper engine blow-up.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great for him.
No.
But it's always something very spectacular to see. I mean, I think back, I'm convinced it was Brundle or Blondell during their McLaren Peugeot years where they had a huge plume of flames and smoke coming out the back. It really reminded me of that. You know, they didn't need any Air Force doing a display at the start because Hulkenberg did it halfway through. It was it was really interesting to see. But I've got to be honest, Austria, I never want to actually get that involved in the race because I'm too busy looking at the scenery. Of all the tracks in the world, you know, outside of Britain, that's my number one that I'd like to go and watch at because it's just glorious.
I sense post-stream plans. But yeah, Austria's one that people keep saying to me you need to go see. But it was a good race. I agree with Dan on that one, and I think we all kind of agree it was a decent race. But Silverstone, I've not got many notes on that because I was there. So my overriding one in caps is sunburn. Is my biggest memory from the British Grand Prix. But Raikkonen, first lap hits Lewis Hamilton, puts him in a spin, of course. That's a 10-second penalty, I believe, for Kimi. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But great fight back from Hamilton to end up second place. Yes and no, he's in a Mercedes and he should be making his way back through the field. But really good stuff to see. And I have to say, from someone that was there rather than watching it on TV, the atmosphere was incredible. Apart from ST next to me just shouting yay every time Ericsson went past. But Silverstone, it gets a lot of talk, has been a great race, Stuart, but I think a good race is probably fair for that one.
Yeah, I think it was, people very much think of the last 10 or so laps, which were incredibly exciting. Silverstone had 2 features that I think saved quite a few races throughout the year. The first was the heavy hitters having an accident at the beginning and having to fight through, which always livens up a race where it might be a bit difficult to have so many real action. And a late incident safety car that brings people together on different strategies. And that's exactly what happened at the end when we had the top 4 racing nose to tail for lap after lap after lap, and once again Bottas having a win in hand and having it cruelly taken away from him. But I think people always walk away from a film thinking about the ending, and they walk away from a race thinking about the last few laps, and those last few laps were something to behold.
Yeah, some good overtaking through the field. Actually, to be fair, it was like I said, it was a good race. I don't think it was up there as my race of the season or anything like that. But I suppose I'll come to each of you. I'll stay with you, Stuart, for first, and I'll go Dan and Jonty, I think. But 10-second penalty. Do you think that was the right decision by the stewards on Raikkonen, or was that a little bit harsh given what we'd seen earlier in the season and since as well?
I think it's a little bit harsh. And again, this ignited a debate about consistency of penalties. I think it was more racing incident than anyone being at fault. And 10 seconds was quite high.
Dan?
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I can't remember. Please, someone correct me. What did Vettel get in France? Was that only a 5 second?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it should have been the same as that. I really do. It's a very similar sort of incident where they're locking up and just nudging that back tyre and spinning them round. So it's a shame. I think a little bit as well, the fact it was the British Grand Prix, I think that had a lot to play with it. And I don't want to claim a bias there, but I think that definitely had something a little bit to do with it. But no, I'd go with a 5 second penalty, I would.
What about you, Jonty?
Oh, definitely. It was far too harsh, considering that there was no damage done to either, really. Let's be honest. And in France, there was damage. So it was a lesser incident with a worse penalty, which is that's just wrong.
Yeah. No, carry on. You're right.
Sorry, I was going to say another point from that, because people keep mentioning it in the chat before I get my turn. We had the first time they ever gave us DRS around a corner. Well, that went well.
Yeah, King Marcus didn't enjoy that, I don't think. I was just going to point out, actually, somebody in chat mentioned that. And also to Daniel, it says, my highlight is Silverstone, Renault using the hard tyres. I think that's the only time we've seen them all season. I think it's these super hards, those nice ice blue coloured ones, possibly.
No, just the hards, I think.
Just the
but
hards.
Again, those were the only times hards were used in a race at all. Very strange by Renault, but whatever.
Yeah, but they obviously thought, who knows? Who knows what they were thinking? But this one might take a while. Germany, I've written it top here in bold. Pivotal weekend for the title race. Again, I'll try not to say too much, but because we do discuss it later in the week. But Hamilton on Saturday, it all looks like it was falling apart. It was terrible. He was devastated. He was sat by his car, distraught, and that was the image we were all going to take away if he didn't win the title. And then come Sunday, Vettel puts it in the wall and the title turns again and he goes on to win the race. I mean, I think that race had just about everything it could have had, and as well as that, a massive title twist, and one of the races of the season quite easily.
What a brilliant race this was. And like you say, it was another one of these races this year that was really set up on Saturday. And like you say, Hamilton, it was looking like, you know what, this could be the pivotal weekend where Hamilton's lost it. I mean, arguably it was caused by him running wide in those first couple of corners, destroying the floor, and that ruined his qualifying. Then a brilliant fight through the field. We had rain for the only time this year, which is a crazy thing to say. We then at the end had those team orders where Bottas once again could have really had another win. We could have had a win, but the team didn't let him. And from 14th through to first for Hamilton was brilliant. But for Vettel, I mean, you think of iconic images in Formula One. And this year, I really think that picture of him in the wall, him kicking the gravel, any of those was really one of the moments of the year. I think that's 100% fair to say.
He was broken over team radio, wasn't he, Jonty? I think it's fair to say absolutely devastated. And looking back now, again, with the benefit of hindsight, I think that's where the title turned, both, not just in terms of points, but also psychologically.
You have to think that. I mean, you look at a big thing we've been saying about Vettel all through the first half of the year was how much he changed. We'd seen his hot-headedness the years before with the Baku incident and various ranting and raving. And then after China, he was very pragmatic about it and very calm. This was a new Vettel. And then Germany, he was just gone again. You could hear it in his voice. And I think it was the fact that it was his mistake. There was no one else involved. It was just him getting it wrong. And he knew that, and you could hear how distraught he was. It was, like you say, a big change, and that's when the title must have turned, because there, he's always chasing.
What are your thoughts on that, Stuart?
I mean, I can't help but agree. Vettel has one of the most interesting psychologies of the drivers. It's really hard to get a handle on it, and I kind of think him being a bit angry and a bit fired up is where he's best. Whereas I think maybe that's where Verstappen is a little bit weakest, and he's been very kind of calm this year, even when things have gone bad for him. Other than immediately after crashing in Germany, but like just generally, he's been in interviews very, very sort of placid, not too wound up. But I think he kind of got hit psychologically this race in the way that you tend to associate with Hamilton. When Hamilton's on a downswing, it really affects him mentally. You can see it in the way he talks and the way he drives. And let's not forget, going into this race, Vettel was in the lead of the championship and looking like he was going to pull away. It was the question was, how is Hamilton and Mercedes going to catch Vettel and Ferrari? How are they going to do this? Vettel just took the win from him in Silverstone. Hamilton had terrible luck in qualifying and threw that away. What's going to happen next? Well, what happened next was the second half of the season, which was very different.
Yeah, polar opposites almost, wasn't it? But I'm going to bring you in now, Jonty. Was that the right decision by the stewards not to give Hamilton a penalty on pit entry? That was terrible, Sean. Shocking.
Oh, this is one that divided people so much, because all of the fans were saying it was right and all of the haters were saying it was wrong and he should have been black flagging all sorts. No, it was the right call, because he was being confused like crazy by his pit wall. And it was so slow that there was never anyone at risk. There was never any danger to it. A lot of people drew comparisons to, was it Kimi in Baku?
I think it was Kimi, yeah.
Yeah, where that is quite obviously a much more dangerous decision, because when he comes back across the white line in Baku, cars are coming up behind him at 220 miles an hour. Here, they were crawling around, so it was definitely the right call.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the problem is I agree based on or using the benefit of hindsight once again, because he got a reprimand. We saw it twice in, I think it was Abu Dhabi. Hamilton did it, and Raikkonen as well in practice. They both got a reprimand. So I know what the comments will fill up with because I've said that, but I don't think that was a worthy of anything other than a reprimand, quite frankly. So we'll move on from Germany, because I could talk about a race all day. Fantastic. Actually, no, I won't. I'm gonna go back to Jonty just for a second. Sorry, Stuart and Dan, but we discussed it in midweek. I'll let you do it briefly again in the stream. But if only that rain had come just 10 minutes earlier.
Oh no, it still guts me. I mean, you saw how bad it was just after the race, with tunnels with waterfalls coming down. 10 minutes earlier, it would have been a Toro Rosso 1-2, guaranteed. Unfortunately, it just didn't come early enough. It was just such a shame.
Jose just pointing out Leclerc's 360 spin as well. Yeah, I love that. The fact he shared that as well and made some fun of it. Hungary, I've got written here, TBH, typical Hungary, Dan. It was all right. A bit set up, like you said earlier, after qualifying. Hamilton benefited from the wet weather. Bottas played a really good team game to keep the Ferraris back, very much like Raikkonen did to keep the Mercedes back in 2017. Yeah, it was typical Hungary.
Yeah, it was typical Hungary. Although, saying that, in the build-up to that weekend in practice and what we'd seen last year, this was a circuit we were almost certain this was going to be a Ferrari circuit. We thought, oh yes, this is going to be another Ferrari 1-2. Is Red Bull, are they going to be in the mix? But then Hamilton did what Hamilton does best, sticks it on pole in changing conditions in the wet and just drove away with it. It was, like you say, a pretty meh race. I can't really remember too much about it, if I'm being totally honest. So I might be, I am forgetting something. Obviously, there was the Bottas incident with Vettel, which probably was the only, yeah.
And Ricciardo.
And Ricciardo, yeah.
Ricciardo, yeah.
Yeah. So there were a few bits and bobs, but it still isn't a race that I suppose sticks out in my mind too much as a brilliant one. Although I will just put it out there, that Vettel-Bottas incident, I still see it as a racing incident more than anything else, if I'm being totally honest.
Let's try this again. So Hungary, not a great race, Stuart, but we did get a couple of incidents involving Valtteri Bottas with Daniel Ricciardo and Sebastian Vettel. Bit sloppy from the Finn.
Yeah, sloppy is exactly the word I was going to use. It was I tend to view this race as the point in the season where Bottas kind of let out a big sigh, realised he was going to be Hamilton's wingman for the rest of the year. I can never say what was going through his head, but he just seemed to sort of not be the best Bottas he could be. And yeah, when it came to both defending from both Vettel and Ricardo, it was clumsy. There's no other word for it. And I was watching him thinking, I believe you. I've been watching the first half of the season and really wanting you to get something out of this season, and I was so disappointed.
I'll let you have the last word on Hungary then, Jonty.
Well, you see, again, it is kind of a little bit away from the track that sticks out in the mind the most. Because, like you say, it was typical Hungary. It's always a bit of a train. But then you had the last sort of 10 laps or so where Bottas became a madman, it seemed. And Twitter was hilarious for a full hour after that happened, with various memes of Bottas driving a missile and various things. And it was so out of character. So, it was certainly something to brighten up a usual Hungary.
Yep. I will mention as well, it was Sahara Force India's last ever Grand Prix, sad times, and it was the last race before Daniel Ricciardo and Fernando Alonso threw hand grenades into the driver market. We all thought we were going to have a nice quiet summer, but how wrong were we? Let's put it that way. But on to Belgium. I think there's only one place to start with that one, and that is right at the start. First corner, Leclair, a very lucky boy. People won't like my opinion on it, but that halo very much... for me, shut any argument on whether it should be there at all. Huge accident. Hulkenberg, 100% to blame for that one. Just an absolute error in judgment in terms of that breaking point. Horrible crash. Very lucky. Not actually, to be fair, not just Leclerc. All of them very lucky, if we're being honest, Jonty.
Oh, absolutely. And it completely closed the debate for me. I've got to be honest, because you watch it, it's quite clearly in a perfect line for Leclerc's head. And it was enough force that it was that contact with the halo that broke the McLaren suspension. So, that would have killed him. End of story. That's why we need it.
Stuart?
Yeah, I have to agree. I definitely also agree that rear tyre was making a beeline for Leclerc. But even if it was debatable or a near miss, it only takes a similar accident for something worse to happen. So yeah, Halo did its job. I think everyone was glad it was there, and by this point in the season, I think we'd all agreed that it, we just accepted it as part of the shape of the car. It wasn't sticking out like the horrible ugly thing it had first been when they were trialing it last year. So yeah, 100%. And as for Hulkenberg, goodness knows what he was thinking. I mean, he must have gone into that corner 200 times that weekend alone. So to misjudge what he was doing at that point was bizarre.
I'll stand by what I say about the halo. I think it absolutely saved him there. But what I will say is, whichever side you fall on that one, and I'm going to reiterate what I said a couple of times during that week as well, the post week, it's better that we're having the conversation, would it save him or did it save him rather than would it have saved him? That's the way I always stand on that one. So, bit of a grudge on it to turn one from Hulkenberg. Dan?
Yeah, very out of character from Nico Hulkenberg, and up to this point, he'd had a brilliant year. I hate the fact you've brought up Grosjean there. You didn't need to do that. You didn't need to. That wasn't very nice. But no, it was so out of character. It really was. And I always say, it's great to see a smash, but also you don't want anyone getting hurt at the end of the day. And this was a big one for the Halo. And I can't really remember much debate after Spa. I know over the summer there was still all this talk of, do we need the Halo still? The Halo's still ugly, blah, 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 blah. But then since then, I don't really remember a lot. I know we've had talk this weekend over Abu Dhabi, but still not a huge lot of debate over the Halo. So I think you put it great, Stuart. I think we've all come to accept it now. And I think this was almost the closing of the book on the debate over the Halo.
In terms of other notes for Belgium, as far as I remember, it wasn't a particularly spectacular race after that one. Vettel took the win. By the end of it, looked very much like the title favourite. Bottas's stunning move around the outside of Hartley at Eau Rouge. It was Eau Rouge. Don't you dare in the comments. I know somebody's going to do it. But I have to bring it up. It is race related, but it's more about what we saw post-race. That shot of Vettel and Hamilton sandwiched between those two Force Indias after everything that had happened over the summer with that team was just great to watch, wasn't it, Stuart? Just all of them coming towards four abreast. I really wish Ocon had stuck it up the inside, but fantastic to see.
Wasn't it though? Wasn't it we spent the whole summer and going into the summer break just really concerned we'd be losing a team halfway through the race, and not just a team that, or with all respect to them, like Caterham and Manor, who have been sliding away from Formula One, both performance-wise and money-wise, but a team that was probably the fourth or fifth best team on the grid, and we really expected good things from them, and we liked their drivers, and everyone was behind them, and then suddenly to think we'd turn up in Belgium without them was mortifying, and then to have them turn up, qualify third and fourth, and then be within a whisker of maybe sneaking the lead for a few laps. Amazing. And I think everyone was supremely happy for them, whether they're Force India fans or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, Mods. I'm just looking at the chat. I'm so sorry, Mods. But yeah, just very quickly, Jonty, that move, Bottas on Hartley, was fantastic.
It really was. And we always like to see moves there. And we don't like to see moves there because we're always sort of cringing away from the TVs. We're thinking, if you get this wrong, we're going to be cleaning you up with a mop. It was terrifying to watch, but brilliant at the same time. But I've got to say, that first shot coming up to turn one, no word of a lie, I was bouncing up and down on the sofa going, go on! Just go for it! And they didn't. I still gutted. He should have just stuck his nose in there and see what happens.
Yeah, nothing on the line for Force India. I'm pretty sure Vettel and Hamilton would have just gone, oh, maybe not. But yeah, that would have been great to watch. But still, fantastic result for them. 5th and 6th, I think. So, really good. Italy, it's a race like China that gets a lot of talk of being a great race. But aside from Vettel hitting Hamilton, a couple of early scruffy moments between, I think, a Force India and a Haas, and Hamilton and Raikkonen fighting, I don't really remember all that much, Dan. I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't think of anything. I mean, good race, all right, but nothing spectacular.
I can't think of anything either, which might be red flags. We might be missing something crazy. I can't remember anything. Yeah, well, I'd like to think not for me, not just yet. But no, I think again it was one of these races where it was a fight for the lead, and we don't often see that. Usually, we see the top 6 are all spaced out, and it's a midfield fight. So Monza was a little bit special in that sort of case, where we had this excitement that Raikkonen had got his first pole position for Ferrari since coming back. He was leading the race. It looked like he could go on and win at Monza. And then we had Hamilton, who, all right, on Saturday, third on the grid, had that contact with Vettel. And all of a sudden, a weekend that looked Ferraris, Hamilton was there. And it became this fight between Raikkonen and Hamilton. And I think it was that tension and that sort of fight that went on for some laps that really was the story of that race, which I think is why people remember it so vividly. But I think further down the grid, Vettel's charge back through the field, like you said earlier, Stuart, that was a theme that went through quite a few of the races this year. But apart from that, I can't remember too much. But again, it wasn't an awful race, and one I particularly quite liked, actually. I'm not going to lie, even though there wasn't a load going on.
The tension's a good word, actually, Jonty, isn't it? I think tense would be a good way to sum that race up. We did get, as a couple have just pointed out in chat, Bottas and Verstappen later on in the Grand Prix. There was, to be fair, there was a good scrap between them, but I think tense is the way to really sum that up. And I think a lot of respect was shown as well between Hamilton and Raikkonen. That was good racing.
Yeah, it really was. It's just a thing of, would we have had that level of respect if it had been Hamilton and Vettel with the state Vettel was in at the time? We had our first sort of incident of Vettel's magically front-heavy car, which was just really weird. Cars that make contact like that don't spin. They were very, very weird. That's what sticks out in my mind the most. I was so gutted for Kimi. he did everything right that weekend, and it just didn't work. And it was such a shame. That's the race that I really, really wanted him to win, just so he could have that final podium with a Tifosi. That's got to be a special thing as a Ferrari driver.
That would have been good. That would have been so good to see as well. Go on then, Stuart. What have I forgotten? Is there anything I'm missing? I know there's some good scrapping in the midfield throughout, but have I missed any major incidents? I'm sure there'll be something.
Well, I was just going to say one thing we haven't mentioned. This race was partly won and lost through Bottas's great wingman antics. If you remember, Mercedes left him out in the lead for way longer than was strategically good for him. And he basically sat in front of Raikkonen wearing out his tyres. So Raikkonen was more vulnerable when Hamilton was able to move up and strike. And I think, one of Bottas's many wingman antics that he put on throughout the year.
Yeah, just now you said that about sort of Bottas, it brings teammates into it. There's a little bit of controversy as well at Ferrari after qualifying, wasn't there? Vettel wasn't happy that Raikkonen got the toe, as I recall.
Yes, which is interesting because apparently they were sticking to the script whereby they swap round race by race over who gets to have the toe, who doesn't get to have the toe. But I guess Vettel was thinking, it's my championship now. This is the narrative of the season. I really should be able to, get all the advantages handed to me.
Thank you, Liam Ward. Thank you very much. Sergei Sirotkin's one and only point as well, Jonty.
Yeah, and honestly, he deserves more.
Yeah.
And he certainly deserves to have kept his seat.
Yeah, he's not driver of the season, and you lot, he's certainly not top bloody 4. But he's much better than I thought he was going to be this season. I have to give him credit for that. So he's done really well. I think actually, on average, beat Stroll in qualifying. So, but anyway, that's neither here nor there really. But Singapore, for me, it was all about that lap on Saturday, Dan. It felt huge. It felt like everything had turned Hamilton's way, and it turned out to be huge. He got that fantastic lap. I want to go back and watch that again after this. It was absolutely stunning in qualifying. Call me fanboy all you like. That was absolutely incredible. Just Hamilton to a T. Managed to get that lead at the start, controlled it from there really, and yeah, I think apart from Grosjean being lapped the dumb so-and-so, I think we didn't really come under threat.
No, I mean, again, you don't need to bring up Grosjean every time. You don't have to do that. But it's nice to see that Grosjean was actually on screen. But no, another race that was controlled by Saturday. Don't let that take anything away from Lewis Hamilton's performance. It was brilliant, and was one of those races where you thought, yeah, he deserves to win this championship. So it wasn't quite the 2017 Singapore. But again, it was an okay race. And again, this was really one of those races that you thought, you know what, Hamilton's got this now. And really did continue that string of form where, again, it's a circuit, Singapore, where Ferrari should be their race. And it's another chink in Sebastian Vettel's armour that led to his undoing in this championship.
Well, Mercedes rocked up, didn't they, Stuart, saying, this is damage limitation. We're not going to be able to perform here. Ferrari are the favourites. And that, I know the lap is just something that Hamilton can deliver, but huge point. I know we see Germany as a big turning point, but Singapore was huge in the championship because that was a must-win for Vettel, and everyone thought he was going to do it. But, I mean, great fighting between him and Verstappen as well. I'll throw that in.
Yeah, while we sort of talk in hindsight as Germany being the real turning point in the season, we didn't know at the time that's the way things were going to go. Whereas I think right through to Singapore, we were thinking, Ferrari have more in hand. It's their championship to lose. Sure, they're behind in the points, but the next couple of races are really going to close things up again. And Hamilton came out with that lap and then just disappeared on race day. And not only that, Vettel lost out in both qualifying and the race to Verstappen. And Ferrari put him on a very strange strategy where he was on but he was on the softer tyre.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it looked like he was going to go onto a two-stop. It seemed like they thought everyone was going to go onto a two-stop. And then he was forced to, forgive me, I don't remember the exact tyre, but nurse the ultra soft tyre for about 50 laps or something. So he sort of ended up 40 seconds behind. And that's really not where we expected them to be.
Two things before we move on, Jonty, that I really want to point out. First off, Perez on Ocon. I'm not changing my opinion on that. He was ridiculous. I mean, yes, all right, Ocon's put his car in a dangerous position, but as I said to a number of people in the comment section to that review, 5 other drivers were in that position and weren't put in the wall. So that's all I'm going to say on that one. Sticking with Perez, that with Sirotkin was the dumbest thing I think I've ever seen him do as a driver, and people defend him on that. I have no idea why. But I have to say, K-Mag's fastest lap as well.
Yeah, great to see someone unexpected pulling out a fastest lap. And you're quite right, Perez went completely crazy. The incident with Sirotkin was just beyond belief. I don't think I've ever seen such a deliberate job in Formula One. Seen it in other things, Johnny Cicotto, famous moment, but in F1, no, I've not seen that, and it was ridiculous. But it was actually a good race to watch because it was very much more a thinking person's race again. It was all about how the strategies were going to play out, apart from Hamilton because he was just gone.
It's that moment where Hamilton's been held up and Verstappen gets in there and I'm like, oh, is he going to go for it? Is he going to stick it in there? But he doesn't, and you're like, oh. And then afterwards he's like, oh, I didn't really go as hard as I could because I didn't think it'd be fair to take the win because of what was happening with the lap cars. I was like, oh, come on, Max, give us something. But no, he didn't, and that really was for me the moment that the season for me turned in Germany, but this was a huge weekend for the title. Russia, Jonty, we were expecting, quite frankly, a crap race. Actually, it was all right.
Yeah, it was. We got some really good scrapping, and from the leaders as well, not just in the midfield. That was a big surprise for Russia. It's not given us great races it's previously. This one certainly delivered. I thoroughly enjoyed this. And again, we had the questions of strategy again. It was who's going to make it work. Really entertaining to watch.
We'll talk about team orders in just a second because I'm sure people will want to hear our opinions on that one. But I'm going to go Stuart and then Dan. So just follow on from each other is fine. But Hamilton's move on Vettel, really good move from Lewis into, I think, turn 4. I love the cars through turn 3 in Russia. I think best bit of the track, fantastic to watch. But was that move by Vettel on the straight too late or even 2 moves?
Oh, now you've caught me on. I'm struggling to remember the exact nature of the move. Yes, I remember. I think it's one of those moves that causes a lot of discussion, but ends up being one of the moves that ultimately, if we dissuaded those kind of things, then we're kind of neutering the racing. I think it was close and kind of
on the line, isn't it?
Yeah, marginal. But they're both world-class championship-winning drivers, and they could handle it.
Go on, then, Dan.
Yeah, no, it was a brave move. I mean, attempting it, that's fair enough. But then Vettel's it reminded me a little bit. And I remember at the time thinking it was almost when Verstappen and Ricciardo made contact in Azerbaijan. It reminded me a little bit of that at the time. I was thinking, oh my God, he's going to go to the back of him. Oh my God. I was convinced he was going to hit him. But like you say, Stu, it shows their class that they were able to calm it down a little bit, both stay in the race. And then Hamilton obviously made that fantastic move a little bit later on. You could say around the outside, but then obviously into the inside of turn 4, I believe it is.
Yep.
So it was a little bit, on your edge of your seat sort of stuff, but it's great to see. And Russia, a real surprise from Russia, considering the other races we had there haven't been the greats or the best. So it was nice to see, actually.
I'll stick with you while I'm here, Dan. Why not?
Okay.
Team orders, they seem to grab all the headlines from that race. Valtteri, it's James, of course. At the time, I can see people's argument that it felt unnecessary given the state of the championship. With hindsight, that swap didn't need to take place in terms of the championship because Hamilton cruised it anyway. But in that race, when you look back and I was watching the highlights, Hamilton was struggling on his tyres and he was losing time behind Valtteri in that dirty air, and Vettel was quick behind and was a threat. So although I didn't like it at the time, I kind of understand it from Mercedes and Hamilton's point of view. It seemed like, as uncomfortable as it is for people to watch, it seemed like the right decision.
Yeah, it's really hard to look at this one with hindsight because, yeah, like you say, you think, oh, well, it's a bit of a waste of time. Hamilton's ended up with 80 points over Vettel in the end. What was the need for that? But during the race, it was a bit touch and go, and it would have been touch and go at the end of the race. So I suppose when you're in that championship battle, and I always say that you never know what's going to happen in Formula One, you can't really be taking those risks, especially when you're up against a team like Ferrari, who, again, at the time, some races really looked like they were going to be the number one team. So, yeah, in the heat of the moment, during that race, it made sense. As much as it pained me, because I do have a little soft spot for Valtteri. I do. People are probably aware of that after today. But at the same time, when the championship's on the line, you can't be making any sort of mistakes. And it's why Mercedes did so well this year, that they weren't leaving anything to chance. There were a couple of mistakes here and there with strategy, but they weren't leaving anything to chance, especially at the end of the season. So, unfortunately, it was the right move, but it did get a lot of backlash, unfortunately.
Yeah, your take on all that, Jonty, the team orders. I don't want to say controversy, but that's kind of what it caused, didn't it, after the race?
Yeah, it's another one of them of, I really don't like it, but I can understand and accept it being the right decision for the team. And look at it this way. If they hadn't done that, and Lewis then, however unlikely, went on to get Danny Rick's reliability, people would have been vying for Mercedes' blood.
Yeah, absolutely. You just don't know, do you? You never know what's around the corner in F1. Again, like me and Dan were saying, and you've kind of said there, with hindsight, you can't really say, yeah, brilliant, but at the time it made perfect sense. I do need to mention, I've seen it in chat, Leclair on Magnussen. Fantastic move, Stuart, but I'm sorry, as much as I adore Charles Leclerc, all four wheels were off the track when he started that move. Am I harsh?
Yeah. I mean, it feels harsh, doesn't it? On the other hand, we've got precedent.
Yeah.
We've got USA 2017, Max making a magnificent move, and then, looking back at the footage, oh yeah, he was fully off the track. That's a bit dodge. I mean, I do agree with you. You do have to make moves within the track limits, otherwise, what's the point of going racing? As exciting and brave and talented as such a move seems.
Yeah, I mean, Magnussen didn't leave him much space, but, he could have... Leclerc was quicker at that point. He could have just backed out of that one and then gone for him a couple of corners later. Fantastic move, really ballsy. I'm going to say that, but I would never I can't pick it as one of the moves of the season because it's all four wheels off the track. For the same reason, I'm going to get so much stick for this. I would not give... Oh, you guys are going to hate me. Verstappen as overtaker the season for a couple of years ago around Blanchimont because he does leave the track on the outside, all four wheels off. So, but I'm going to move on very quickly before I'm absolutely lynched on that one. Japan. Jonty, I mean, I don't remember an awful lot from this race. I think that was the weekend that my PC was being a son of a gun, and so I missed quite a bit from that weekend, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to rely on you three to guide me through this. The only thing I can really think of is Verstappen on Raikkonen and one hell of a stunning move from Kevin Magnussen on Charles Leclerc at 130R.
Yeah, it wasn't a brilliant race. We had Max and Vettel around Spoon, of course, with Vettel going for, I still maintain, a crazy move and coming off worse again. I still don't understand why he went. Well, I understand why he was going for the move because he's desperately fighting for the championship, but that was just not there. Not when you're going to come out of the corner onto the main straight. That was. I just don't know what he was thinking or however he thought it was going to come off right, because if he had pulled it off, he was going to be a sitting duck coming into the next corner. It was ridiculous. But like you say, the big point of that race was Magnussen's move. Absolutely glorious. And, gotta say, it trumps Alonso's on Schumacher.
Ooh.
Ooh, controversial. From what I understand, Stuart, it wasn't shown on telly, which telly, why not? Television. It wasn't shown in the broadcast footage. It was only when replays emerged afterwards because of what happened on the straight or a couple of corners later that people started talking about that. But that frustrates me because that sort of thing should be shown on TV. But it was, when you compare what happened on the start-finish straight, I like to refer to that as very much 0 to 0 for Magnussen.
Yes. Yeah, very much. I'm so glad, actually, in a sort of over the course of the season, we've got to see so much from Magnussen, because he wasn't really making many fans last year, partly with his angriness and partly with his catchphrase, shall we say. But yeah, I mean, this is the best of what has been an impressive season of races and moves and just general pace. I mean, I've been impressed with him this year, and I didn't want to be because I didn't really like him coming into this season. Just partly in a character way, but yeah, I thought it was amazing. And again, like you said, disappointed they weren't able to show that during the race.
Yeah, Dan, that move on the straight, it was no Grosjean stupidity, but it was fairly stupid, wasn't it?
Blimey. Yeah. You probably a bit daft
Unnecessary,
sending this
actually, is
over
probably a
to-
better
well,
word.
Yeah, you're probably a bit daft sending this over to Magnussen's number one hater. It was a bit silly. It wasn't the first time we'd seen him do this season. We saw it in Spain in practice. We saw it in Azerbaijan as well. So he did have a great year, Magnussen, as much as that pains me to say. He did have a great year, but there were still a few little mistakes here and there from him which weren't brilliant. But at the same time, we've spoke about it in Russia and again in Japan. Charles Leclair at this time of the season, we've not spoke about him much tonight, but he had a brilliant year. And this was the part of the season where he seemed to be in the points every single weekend. It was incredible to see, considering where Sauber had been at the beginning of the year. So it was really starting to build up at the end of the year, although Hamilton had a great race in Japan. It was really starting to build up that, yes, the title might be over, but in the midfield, it was still alive.
Yeah, I've been impressed by Magnussen this year. That was one of his few moments that, people say he has a right to defend himself. He does, but I don't care what Charlie Whiting says in his, it was only one frame. It wasn't one frame. I've watched that back, so it was more than one frame. Yes, they're split-second decisions for the 900th time this stream, but that's a late move. I don't care what people say on Leclerc. 4 to go, and I think we can move through these quite quickly because they're fairly recent. We'll go to the USA. Story of the weekend. First of all, really, Stuart, Raikkonen's first win in 113 races. I'm not going to lie, and I'll get a little bit of stick, I don't mind, but I was quite emotional after that race. Great to see.
Yeah, it's hard not to be, isn't it? Funny, he's a funny guy, isn't he? How much love he gets from the fans, despite his extreme lack of personality, or sort of a really heavy personality of nothing, I guess. I thought we wouldn't see another win. I thought at the beginning of the year when I thought he was going to retire, and I thought at the end of the year when I thought he was going to Sauber, I thought we have already seen Kimi's last win. And it was just really nice to see a great, solid drive. Brought it home. Hamilton had an F1. I don't think there was anyone in the paddock that wasn't happy for Kimi, kind of like when Barrichello won his last race for Brawn. Yeah, I didn't have a tear in my eye, but I was very emotional.
Yeah, we all love a stat, so I'm going to throw it out there. He leaves Ferrari as their last pole sitter, their last world champion, and their last race winner. So kind of a nice way to end the season for him. I mean, Kimi, maybe I'll do something in the winter on him because this season he's been not back to his best. I don't think he's back to his levels that he was in 2007, but he's 38, 39 years old. He's not going to be, but he really surprised me this year. But the USA overall, Jonty, bloody good race. I mean, top three consistently in the same shot pretty much. Plenty of overtaking. Stunning comeback from Max Verstappen. And right towards the end, you've got title on the line for Hamilton still trying to go around the outside of Verstappen to snatch it.
Yeah, exactly. It was really good all across the board. Verstappen's comeback was nothing short of amazing, especially when he was a few more laps. He could have taken that win. It's been mentioned a lot in the chat, and I must say it's a shame that with all of that amazing action that was on track sort of throughout the race, the big thing that people remember from it was meow. which was, I've got to be honest, brilliant. That had me laughing so much watching the race. The fact that someone had found a microphone, let's spice things up a bit.
You've ruined it, Jonty. I was going to go meow onto Mexico. Never mind. But very quickly, Vettel on Ricciardo. You touched on it earlier, actually, Jonty, but I'll come to you on this one, Dan. Really bizarre situation. Up the inside, fair move, aggressive, but he does understeer and it's front axle against front axle and somehow ends up Vettel spinning like in Italy.
It's so strange. I mean, even the move itself, I know everything's on the line, and that weekend Hamilton could have wrapped up the championship, but it really did sum up Vettel's season. It really did. Yes, you could argue it's a little bit unlucky, it's a little bit rash, but at the end of the day, he needed all the points he could have got that weekend. It was a carnage opening lap. You know, we had Stroll in the Alonso incident. We had, unfortunately, Grosjean smashing him to Leclair as well. But
again,
you know, that's not great to see, is it? And we're all upset about that one. But Vettel, yeah, Hamilton, you know, as we all know, didn't end up wrapping up the championship that weekend. But you would still like to think that Vettel was giving it his all. And I think with that incident, you've really got to question, had he given up at that point? I know that's a pretty crazy thing to say, but I think you've at least got to question it because he did need all the points he could have got.
Yeah, screw it. Meow on to Mexico. Stunning weekend from Max Verstappen, Stuart. Dominant, I think 17, 18 seconds up the road from second place, Sebastian Vettel. I mean, Red Bull knew they were going to be good. They were very much gearing up for the previous races, weren't they, for Mexico? But really good drive. And I think a drive that almost, probably alongside the USA, epitomises his turnaround in 2018 versus those first 6 races.
Yeah, it was a really solid drive from him. And like you say, yeah, we kind of all knew Red Bull were going to be on top. It was the sort of... we didn't quite understand why going into it, but once it happened, we were like, oh, okay, this is Red Bull's race. Kind of a bit bittersweet because Daniel Ricciardo got that stunning pole that surprised us all, really, because we were actually going into this race and looking through the practice sessions thinking, oh, yeah, Max has got this. This is Max's race. This is going to be another win for Verstappen. And then Ricciardo takes pole. Verstappen looks a bit crestfallen, but yeah, bad start from Ricciardo, ultimately retired. No one else got within touching distance of Max Verstappen. And once again, Hamilton sort of limps home kind of uneventfully to a title.
Yeah, second year in a row, wasn't it? He did the same in 2017, had to fight his way back and only got to about 8th, I think it was, in the end. So, yeah, I mean, Vettel did all he could for me, Dan. He was really racy, but up against the Red Bulls with their pace, certainly Verstappen, he never looked like he was going to win that race, but he was proper racy, some aggressive overtaking to get himself up to second place. So I can't help but I know he gets some stick this year, but I really feel like he did probably all he could in Mexico to keep that alive as long as he could.
Yeah, Mexico was a good race for Vettel. I think that's fair to say, but I think most of us would agree he'd made too many mistakes prior to Mexico, and Mexico was a little too late, unfortunately. But it was, like I say, it was a solid race from him, but Hamilton, just in cruise mode, and that's all he needed. And I think, if we're all being honest, we expected him to win it in the USA, and we were all a bit surprised when he didn't win it in America. So it was inevitable. But again, it was a pretty good race, and it's nice to see always when it's not a Mercedes or Ferrari winning, and the race is a little bit spiced up in that sense.
Yeah, and the highly rated Stoffel Van Dorn was in the points for the first time since Baku.
Yeah.
Since Baku.
Yeah.
What's going on?
He had a really strong start, didn't he? Then he went completely off the boil mid-season. And then in those last few races, this GP2 winner, Stoffel Van Dorn, suddenly appeared. Where he'd been the rest of the year, I have no idea, because he had a brilliant end to the year. And of course, I'll always bring it up. He'll do very well in Formula E next year.
Yeah, there you go. Just you can cross that off any bingo card you've got. But yeah, I'll do talk about Ricciardo for anybody wondering in Abu Dhabi, because I think that's probably the best time to do it, because we could talk about him every single race based on his season, really. But Brazil, great watch. I think I said to you in midweek, Jonty, or on Saturday, it was yesterday, wasn't it? Well, midweek. But said to you yesterday, it was a typical brilliant Brazilian Grand Prix, but without the weather playing any real part in causing the chaos. So I really, really enjoyed Brazil. Well, we will talk about that moment in a moment.
Yeah, Brazil, again, always good. It doesn't seem to matter what happens there, you get a good race. And like you say, this time it didn't generate its own weather out of thin air, which seems to happen quite often. But at the start of the race, I've got to talk about it. The Renaults, wheel to wheel, side by side for almost an entire lap. It was fantastic. We definitely need more of that.
Yeah, that was good stuff. That was good stuff. One of my highlights of the season, bizarrely, out of everything that went on, I loved that with Hulkenberg and Sainz was fantastic. But Stuart, sorry mate, again coming to you first on it, but Verstappen, did he lose that race, or was that race taken away from him in that incident with Ocon? Because this does divide people. I'm going to stand by what I've always said, and I think neither driver is completely blameless. I think that Ocon has got to take the bigger slice of the blame as the lapped car, but Verstappen could have left him some room.
I think that's the I don't know what I'm saying, the large and tall of it. That's not a phrase, but I think that's basically summed it up. It was interesting because I was on the post race stream covering it with you straight after, and I was on the scale of blame. My needle was pointing very much in Ocon's direction, and as time went on, I think a lot of people started to think, well, did Verstappen have to be so aggressive on Ocon? It wouldn't have cost him anything to leave a bit of room. I think a bit more communication between the drivers would have been more helpful. So I'm not 50-50, but I definitely think not a smarter person, but maybe a wiser, more experienced driver would have just seen Ocon coming and let him go and been able to carry on with his race strategy as he was at the time, because Verstappen was on a slower pace managing his tyres and engine at that point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you look at it and you think, well, Max, if you just let him go, Max, you're comfortably clear of Hamilton, you're under no pressure, turn the car down, bring it home. But he's not that type of driver. Certainly not currently, anyway. It might come with age and a bit more experience. He might start driving that way. Vettel, I remember he was nicknamed the Crash Kid once upon a time. He was very much hot-headed. Hamilton was hot-headed when he first came into the sport. I don't care what Hamilton fans say, he was. But at the end of the day, you're mature, and I'm sure that will come in time. But anything you want to add on Brazil? Dan, I know there's plenty we could talk about, but it was only a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it was. I mean, maybe the incident with Hamilton in qualifying, blocking Sorokin, blocking Raikkonen was something a bit out of the blue. We didn't really expect that. So that was something interesting from that weekend. But no, not too much. It was a good race, some nice and spicy moments here, there and everywhere. So yeah, not a bad one.
Oh, and the Weybridge, Stuart, what a joke that is.
Yeah, there was a bit of a little bit of angry incidents of the Weybridge. It's surprising me looking back, considering how Vettel seemed to have cooled off after USA and kind of accepted his fate as losing this championship, how hot-headed he got on that Saturday. But yeah, I like to think we've all moved on from the Weybridge and learned our lesson. And maybe FIA have learned to bring 2 Weybridges next time.
What I find quite funny is when you look back through, as we've done in the last hour and a half, and as I'm sure you've all done your prep before this, looking back at some of the incidents in the season and then comparing them to how Twitter kicked off about the Weybridge, you think, really? It's a Weybridge. Really? Get over it. It's the rules. Some of the accidents we've had and some of the incidents, it's quite funny, typical Twitter. But we are on to Abu Dhabi. As with Russia, Jonty, expected absolute rubbish. Actually really good by Abu Dhabi standards. Obviously, that first lap crash for Hulkenberg is probably the dominating factor early on. Do you still think, I don't know, I seem to remember after the stream, or in the stream after the race a couple of weeks ago, you said that you felt like Grosjean takes more of the blame. Do you still feel that way, having watched it back a bit?
Honestly, I've got to say that I do. Because that situation, we see that kind of move so much, where a driver's been run to the outside and he's got, even with when he's sort of earned the right to some space, he's got to make that choice of, do I back out, cut the corner, or have a crash? Because none of the possibilities of it are going to lead to him getting the place. That's where he needed to be backing out of it or cutting the corner to avoid an incident. Then afterwards, Hulkenberg could probably get a penalty for pushing him off the track, instead of just sticking your nose in there and watching him go tumbling.
Yeah, has your opinion changed on that at all? Dan, I don't think I asked you at the time what you thought about it, but do you think, and I'm not taking it because it's Grosjean, it's not a dig this time, but genuinely, do you think that was the right decision by the stewards to call that a racing incident?
For the record, Jonty, I've never disagreed with someone so more in my life. No, I probably have a bit of bias. I'm not going to lie, I probably do, but I'll own that. No, I think all the drivers are going through. Well, I say all the drivers. Loads of the drivers are going through that section of corners side by side. Hulkenberg, like we all know, squeezes him off a little bit. And yeah, Grosjean could have gone off the runoff area. And that would have been all happy days. But he stuck himself in there, which I don't really think. Yes, you could say, oh, well, that's arguably could cause an incident. But then I don't think that's to be shone upon because we want to see close racing. But then I think for me, the clincher is that Hulkenberg said, oh, I expected him to go over the runoff area and I didn't see him. Well, I think that's a bit daftest, if I'm being honest. I'm not a fan of that. I think you should be seeing where you shouldn't just be expecting him to go off the runoff area. You should be expecting him to be side by side. So I'm not going to lie. I don't think Hulkenberg should have got a penalty. I'm not saying that. I think it was fair that it was a racing incident. And I was very happy during the watch long that Grosjean didn't end up getting any sort of penalty because, yeah, I definitely wouldn't put the blame at his door because he wasn't given a fat lot of space, if I'm being totally honest. But I'm trying to stay calm as best I can because, Jonty, you've really riled me there. So just need to just calm down a little bit.
Daftus, is that Latin?
Oh, that's just something I say. It's one of the many sayings I will introduce to everyone over the next few weeks and I suppose past few months I've been here. So get used to it. There's plenty more where that came from.
Officially Dan's final stream. But yeah, it was a good race, wasn't it, Stuart? But I think the biggest surprise for most, it rained.
Yes. If you call that rain, we definitely don't expect rain in the desert races, in the Middle East races, and it technically rained, even though I think it was such a fine rain and the circuit was so hot that it never actually had any effect on the surface. Particularly, we didn't see times drop massively, but it did enough to put people on edge, which I think has been a sort of a theme through some of the races. There's, as you said before, there's a tension starts to build. Will a chasing driver be able to overtake the leader? Will these strategies work out? Will this rain affect the race? And it reminded me a lot, actually, of Germany, where we had this very light rain starting to come in. And while that did have more of an effect, and in fact, quite a big effect on the result of the race, I think drivers were and teams were like a little bit on, especially as an audience, actually very much on edge as to what is this rain going to do? We haven't seen rain here before. You haven't really experienced this track in the wet. What if it does actually come down a little bit harder? What's going to happen? Ultimately, nothing happened, but it was exciting.
It's good to see, wasn't it? Just something a bit different. I know there was plenty to talk about in that race, but it was only a couple of weeks ago, so we're gonna move on. I do just want one final thing, I guess, or two final things really on Abu Dhabi. All the scenes at the end is what that was about for me, Stuart. Such an emotional thing to see. Hamilton, Alonso and Vettel side by side, donuts on the start-finish straight. But I've got to mention it, 3 5-second time penalties for Fernando Alonso for cutting the corner. Was that a man that just went, stuff it, I'm done?
I think that was a man that went, stuff it, I'm done, about 10 races ago. But yeah, I think he was just sort of having fun by that point. Maybe he was hoping he wouldn't get caught out while he sort of went for the lap record or something. But no, it was very nice to see him being sent off in that way. I don't understand why Van Dorn wasn't sent off in that way by Leclair and Gasly. Mysterious, but maybe next time.
Yeah, it's just a classic Alonso moment. We're going to leave the review there. You might have spotted it in chat, which may have given a bit of thinking time, so I'll give Stuart time because I think you two have had a bit more. But 3-word season reviews we're going to get on to. Love to put you on the spot, and because you're a Grosjean fan, I'm coming straight to you first because why would you be a Grosjean fan? Dan, your 3-word season review. Be nice.
Oh my God, I've been put on the spot. 3-word season review. Grosjean, stop crashing.
Oh. Okay.
You put me on the spot, so it's very difficult. But I'll go with that.
Grosjean stopped crashing or stopped crashing?
Stop crashing. Because even at the end, he was still doing it. Bless him. He tries.
Stop it, Roman. I can imagine Dan watching races and that's all he shouts.
Yeah,
Jonty?
exactly.
I was literally going to say the same thing just to wind Dan up.
Cheers.
It's hard to choose between either Lewis stayed strong or Ferrari binned it, because that's how the result of the season feels.
Ooh. Gone with two. See, I kind of want to go fight for 5, but it wasn't after the summer break, really, was it? But I'm probably going to go for the Verstappen turnaround. Stuart.
Well, my first thought was quite a boring, better than expected, or actually better than looks, which I kind of want to do better than it looks. But because if you kind of look at this season in a number of angles and think, oh, that's a bit of a boring season, or not much really happened. But actually, when you're experiencing it, it was quite good fun. But I'm going to go with Vettel's last challenge. I'm feeling that was it for him. I don't know why. I've just been having this feeling.
Ooh,
Can I change mine?
Oh, go on then.
Chain bear foreshadowing.
Chain bear in trouble. That's what I'm going to go with on that one. I'll take some of yours from chat very quickly. Go on, Stuart.
I was like, you know how good I am predictions, having got a third of my 2018 predictions right. So
we don't talk about predictions on the F1 word. I'm terrible, and you'll just set Jonty off if you do that.
Yes, we do.
I'm just glad I didn't promise a prize. That'd be terrible. Yeah, take some from chat very quickly before we disappear. No Q&A today for obvious reasons. RC says better than normal. Ricardo not the normal says Owen. Oh, didn't mention him in Abu Dhabi, did I? I'll do something on him in the winter because Danny Rick. Can't help but feel for the guy. Just 2 podiums all year, and they were his 2 wins, and then nothing podium-wise or win-wise since Monaco. I mean, what can you say? Poor guy. Kimi wins again. Not too bad, says Mario. Rayson's 3-word review. Bottas got lapped. Trust you. Ultimately good season, says Jack. Ferrari, then Mercedes, says Chris. I'm going to scroll for a few more. Mission spin now, says Mario Master. Very good. I liked it, says Jose. Hamilton topples Vettel, says Ali G on WA. Sorokin, best driver. He is not. He's good, but he was much better than I expected, but he is not. He is not the best driver. Leclair is coming. Oh, good one. I like that one. Bango's Honda. Not really. Maybe Australia. A couple of times. Not anything like we're expecting. Silly season madness, says Red G. How did we not mention silly season? I almost did, but yeah. Great controversial Hamilton. 2 more very quickly. Leclerc proved metal from Flying Tiger, and Stephen, that's quite a good one, mate. Ferrari opened gate.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to leave it there because we've been going for, I wanted 90 minutes maximum, and guess what? We overran because that's just the way we do things. But thank you very much, Dan, for coming along. It's been a pleasure. I know we've got a few things that we're looking forward to working on Formula E in the winter, so looking forward to that. But thank you for this one, mate. I know it's been a long one, but it's been awesome as ever.
It's been a load of fun looking back at the 2018 season. Thanks for having me as always. And I hope next year we have a better tagline than Engineered Insanity. I can't even say it. Engineered Insanity. I can't even say it. Terrible tagline. I'm glad we didn't talk about that too much today, but thanks for having me as always.
I think Dan's bumped his head again. We'll check him out after the stream. It's fine. Thank you as always, Stuart. It's been a pleasure to have you on. Love getting your insight, and it's always good fun. And I have to say, massive kudos on your season review. Fantastic video.
Oh, thanks very much. It was a lot of fun to make. I'm glad you enjoyed it. If you haven't watched it, you can see it at my channel. There you go, little plug there. Anyway, yes, thank you for having me on this season review. A lot of 2019 things to look forward to now, and I'll see you then, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. It's been awesome all year, and well, What a year, Jonty. Fantastic, not just for the channel, but really good season, enjoyable, bit of tit for tat to start off. But thank you once again for all your help this year and for coming along today. It's been fun. I know it's been a long one, but it's still been fun.
Yeah, it's been great to have a long one where we just go. Just go. Forget the time. That's what everyone wants to see. Well, I must quickly mention before I go a 3-word season review that we didn't think of from RC. Hail King Marcus. He's gone.
Oh, don't make me cry.
Yeah. On that note, as far as these go, see you next year, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I will inevitably talk to you all very shootly. Very shootly. There you go. I went all season without going Irish, and there we go. But very shortly. But thank you to all of you again.
Goodbye.
See ya.
Cheers.
Yep, thanks to all the guys for that one. It was a treat as always. Thank you to you guys for coming along and sticking around as well. I know it was a long one, but all good stuff. Absolutely loads still to come this winter, and it all starts tomorrow. I'm teaming up with Planet F1 all of next week for their end of season awards. You've got videos Monday to Friday on that one, then another one next Monday on that. There's also a video, the first Formula E video, going up on Saturday. Not decided on a live stream next Sunday because next week, the week after next week, so from the week commencing the 10th, there's a video just about every day till Thursday. So absolutely tons still to come. So make sure you have subscribed if you're here for the first time, and you keep an eye out on your sub boxes because I know YouTube like to mess around this time of year. But yeah, lots still to come. I will be back tomorrow with the first video of that Planet F1 Awards series, which I believe is Driver of the Season. I'm hoping it's Driver of the Season, the nominees for that one. So make sure you give that a watch and head off to their site and vote once that poll goes live, because it's an interesting one to have to pick from. I'll say that. After that, it's just, like I say, all week. You can follow me over on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.